Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John, we're back this week. We're without basketball coaches this week. They will start coming in again next week.
Okay.
I guess everybody took Veterans Day off, and you guys had school today, though, didn't you?
Yes, we did.
For whatever reason, I thought this kids would be out of school today, and
they probably do it better because they what they do is we had an hour veterans assembly.
Oh yeah,
in which they do it every year. They bring in a lot of the veterans, and our junior ROTC conducts the service, and actually, if you want to honor veterans, oftentimes it's probably better to have the service where the kids can see rather than just let them stay home when they may not ever see it.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great idea that you point out there, and I think Barren County and Glasgow and all have been doing these kinds of things for years now. I think Barren did this too, but I know Glasgow used to do the honorary degrees for people who had served during World War II and that kind of stuff.
They did one today.
Did they? Yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
Yep.
But anyway, we'll talk some football instead of veterans here. And we're going to start off with this Glasgow game. They beat Adair 42-8 on Friday night. And to me, I thought Glasgow played well from start to finish in that game. And that includes the second half where Glasgow was up 36-0 at halftime, and then to start the second half, Adair brought in their JV, and then Glasgow brought in their JV.
Perfect.
So the whole second half was JV. Yeah,
the perfect recipe, right? They got an easy win, played well, and got their starters out without getting anybody hurt.
Yep.
You can't ask for anything better than that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, the other thing was Adair, like so many other teams the Scotties have faced this year, lined up and were determined to not let Nick Mitchell hurt them as best they could. And Tanner Abernathy had another good night, threw 5 touchdown passes. Jay Long, Canarius Flint, Jamari Mack, they all caught big plays, Hunter Scott, and the receiving corps just kept lighting it up.
Somebody eventually may have to figure out maybe that's not the right strategy.
Yeah, for real.
Because Abernathy's throwing 3 or 4 touchdown passes every week, it seems like to me.
Yeah. And so, that's going to make for an interesting thing this Friday night when they play Taylor County because the last game was a 31-28 win. It was a
great game, wasn't it?
Yeah, great game. Alex Elizalde kicked a game-winning field goal, I think, with 1.9 seconds left. And so that sealed that win and sealed the fact that the Scotties get to host that game this Friday at 7 o'clock. And, Taylor's going to be one of the more talented teams Glasgow has faced this year, but they kind of did the same thing when they played Glasgow during the regular season as they basically were going to try to stop Nick Mitchell. Wait a minute. Yes, they were going to try to stop Nick Mitchell. It was the next week when Nick Mitchell was out, but so they loaded the box and that kind of thing, and Glasgow was able to hit some big plays and get some points with receivers. And Tanner Abernathy had a great game that night. I think he was missed 5 passes and threw for over 300 yards in that game. So, I mean, one of the things you and I talked about a lot last year was at some point in time Glasgow was going to have to learn how to throw the football. And it bit them when they played Walton Verona.
Right.
And Jeff Garman, when he came into the preseason, told us we're going to figure out how to throw the ball more this year.
And when they want to throw it.
Yeah, when they want to.
Not when you have to.
Yep.
It's when you want to. And that's when you can do that, that's when you have the balance that you need. You can run and throw, but you need to dictate when you do that.
Yeah.
And it seems like to me they've found that balance this year.
Yeah, and I mean the part of it is the development of a couple of players in Jay Long and Hunter Scott as receivers. Hunter Scott was a backup running back previously. That has really kind of opened the door for that as well, I think.
It helps to be able to throw 10-yard passes and they can turn into 30 or 40.
Right.
I mean, it does. And some of Glasgow's receivers have really good breakaway speed. Mm-hmm. And that's a big factor. And plus, you got to give credit to Abernathy. He's, I think, a much improved player from last year.
Yeah.
And you add all that together, and that's one of the reasons why they're Glasgow sitting at 10-1, and they look like a legitimate 3A title contender.
Yeah, and with that, as you mentioned, title contender. If they pull off this win against Taylor County, I think we talked about this last week. There was very little chance Glasgow could wind up with another home game, but things are kind of shaping up a little differently because on Friday night, Christian Academy of Louisville beat Mercer County, which had a higher RPI rating than Glasgow, and beat them pretty handily. I guess not really surprised by that.
No, it didn't surprise me at all.
They had lost to them during the regular season, but it was a 3-point game. It was 45-42, and the one Friday was not close.
Right.
And then that puts them in the matchup with DeSales, which is what we expected. DeSales is, I think they have the third highest RPI rating.
And they screwed up the RPI is what they've done.
Yeah.
The RPI was fine at one time until they started doing all this stuff about getting credit for playing teams above your level and this and
right.
that, and then it's just thrown the RPI and craziness.
Yeah, and so kind of the way this works out, if Glasgow can beat Taylor County, let's say Christian Academy of Louisville beats DeSales, which they lost to them in overtime during the regular season, and it would not be the first time that the team that won the regular season matchup between these two lost the playoff game. Christian Academy of Louisville has a lower RPI than Glasgow. And then Bardstown and E-Town are playing, and E-Town won the regular season meeting 21-14. E-Town has a higher RPI rating than Glasgow. Bardstown has a lower RPI rating than Glasgow. So let's say that you wind up with Bardstown winning a winnable game, Christian Academy of Louisville winning a winnable game, Glasgow winning their game, and then Paducah, they should dominate Murray again like they did during the regular season. Not Murray. Anyway, Paducah should dominate their regular season, their district championship game. Yeah. There was an upset. I say upset. It was a 2-3, so I don't remember who they're playing. Anyway, so they were supposed to play Caldwell County. Anyway, so they win their game.
The point is Glasgow could conceivably host.
Yes, they could wind up. And the way it would play out, basically, is that they would get Bardstown at home if it plays out that way, and then Cal would go to Paducah Tillman.
That's good, but it's no lock that Glasgow's going to beat Taylor.
No, it is not.
Yeah, I think people. I wouldn't assume that. I think Glasgow's slightly better, but the two teams have already played. It was right down to the wire, 31-28, and I believe I'm right. One of Taylor's better players did not play the first time. Is back.
Oh, is he playing?
I believe that's what I have heard through the grapevine, but I don't have great information.
What's his name? Dre Gooden? Something like that.
One of the Goodens. That's correct. Now they're a good running back. Played the last time in his back. Oliver. He's really good. So, this should be a really good football game. It's a game that if Glasgow loses to Taylor, it's not shocking. I mean, Taylor is really, really good.
Yeah.
So, but it's a game that. At Scotty Field, and I don't think anybody is playing any better than Glasgow in 3A.
No.
And Taylor struggled with Casey the last two times they played Casey.
Yeah.
But Glasgow struggled with Casey too, so I guess
they did.
So Casey ended up being a better team than I thought.
Yeah, they had lost a lot of talent from last year, but they still had the same coach. Was it Stonebreaker, I think is his name?
Yep.
And
good system.
Yeah, obviously he does some good work up there because Casey was a doormat program for a long time.
I don't think I forgot to check, but at one time there was no 4 versus 1 upsets, were there? I did not see any.
No, I don't think so.
In fact, we'll talk next segment with Barren and North Hardin. That was about as close of a 1-4 as anybody, 24 points. Most of them were blowouts.
Yeah, okay, so good point there, John, because, the KHSA changes the playoff format. We still wind up with 4 teams from each district getting into the playoffs. And in the case of one 6A district, what happened was there were 5 teams, and Marshall County was number 5. They got the gift of going and playing Trinity for the first round because there were only 3 teams in Trinity's district.
Crazy.
Yeah. So the problem that we continue to have with the high school football playoffs is we basically just have too many teams in the playoffs, especially over 6 classifications.
But basketball has everybody, James.
You know what? I'm here to tell you, in the state of Kentucky, not all sports are created equal.
That's
and
exactly
you shouldn't
right.
build all playoffs based on what they do in basketball.
Thank you. I agree. Yes.
So they did not fix that problem. We have a whole bunch of games being played for no good reason.
Right.
Basically, when you get down to it, there's no competitive reason to play them.
In a lot of ways, and they could really do, I think, a great service to football by just doing one thing.
Yeah.
Eliminating this first week of the playoffs.
Yeah.
and starting the season 1 week later, where it's not 105 on August 15th. And if you just push it back and just say, okay, we're going to eliminate this first round of playoffs, that would really help.
So then the playoffs could be done in the third week of November thereabouts instead of either the last weekend of November or first weekend.
Yeah, whatever, however how that count. That's right. Whatever the calendar.
I mean, I think that'd be fine too because you don't have a bunch of teams that go all the way. I mean, you have 12 teams that go all the way to the last weekend in football.
Yep.
And these days you probably don't have a whole bunch of players that go transition from football to basketball. But I still imagine you have a few. And I imagine things like ADs and principals and that kind of stuff would like to have a week where they don't have to fool with anything.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah, I agree. But the first week is it's generally – now the 2-3 games can be good.
Yeah, and some of them were. We had Madisonville, North Hopkins, and we had Logan County play, and it was quite a game.
And the Allen Warren East game was really good.
Yes, it was.
Allen – hung on to win. That was a good game. And you had some other Monroe Clinton, good game, 14-7. It's Clinton's probably first ever district win in football.
Their first ever playoff win.
It's a playoff win. So there were Meade County and Central Hardin was a good ball game.
Yes, it was.
So those games were fine. But the 1-4 games has not been very good consistently, and the only way to do it is, as we talked about, you just have to eliminate teams from getting into the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, and if we're going to use this RPI thing for some seeding, I wouldn't mind seeing the state just say, all right, we're going to do an RPI setup. And I think I've said this before on here. I mean, what I'd like to see is if you think you have an ultra-competitive program and your ambition is to win a state title every year, you schedule the toughest teams possible because that's probably your fans might be interested in that too.
Take the top 16 teams of each class?
Yep, and just seed the playoffs like that.
4 rounds.
Yep, and do it that way. And then if you have other programs that aren't as interested in the playoffs and they just want to play their neighbors.
You can have one extra game.
Yeah, that sounds good too. And then,
play whoever you want to.
You basically play a money schedule, whatever, and then you make more money for your athletic program, and you don't spend any of it on a bus to Paducah.
Yep.
Or somewhere like that.
Or Marshall County to Trinity.
Yeah, or Walton Verona, or whatever, Lloyd Memorial, as Monroe had to do.
Yep.
You don't waste that money. You just get that. You get the money to play the sport, basically.
Right.
Which then helps all your other sports because it funds them.
Now this week's second round of the playoffs should be really good.
Yeah, we'll have some great games. I mean, we mentioned the Glasgow Taylor. We'll have Bowling Green South Warren. Even the Franklin Simpson Allen County Scottsville game, I think, will be a good one.
Right.
North Hardin Central Hardin will be a good one. I mean, there will be a bunch of good games this second week.
Yes.
And there usually are. No matter how it's set up.
That's correct.
Well, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back to talk about the Barren County football game.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, the Barren County Trojans high school football season came to a close on Friday night. They lost to North Hardin in the first round of the playoffs, 24-0. I'm sure there were people around the state who looked at that score and said, that's all? Because I'm sure they expected North Hardin. I mean, they're rated, I think, number 2 in 6A right now. To win big, and I think maybe a lot of folks around here expect them to win big. I actually thought, somebody asked me, and I said, well, I would not be surprised if it's very much like the first meeting. It's a close game in the first half, but eventually North Hardin wears them down. They just got so much talent.
Yeah, and it was similar at first. And the first game over here is 14-0 at half.
Right.
And at Friday night is 10-0 North Hardin. Tell you what, defensively, we could not play any better.
Yeah.
We held them to I keep the opposing team's stats, 230 yards, and 100 came in the last 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah, I got part of the broadcast, and they had like 30 yards like at halftime or almost at halftime.
Yeah, forced them to punt, I think, 6 or 7 times.
Yeah.
Defensively, give Coach Muse, the defense coordinator, and the guys, they took away their run from. Now, North Hardin, in fairness, for some reason, didn't try to run much. But our pass defense was really good coverage, and also we put pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah.
It was 10-0 with 4 minutes left in the third quarter, and we drove it all the way down to the 3.
Good grief.
and this was out. Now Holloway went out in the first quarter with an injury, never came back, and Jamison Bowie, the quarterback, broke his finger and did not play at all the second half.
Okay.
So those are two of our better offensive players, and Coach Arnett moved Tyler Bush to quarterback, and he played the Wildcat basically.
Yeah.
And did pretty good, to be honest with you. We kept it on the ground. It's kind of like how UK plays. And then on the third down, he tried to make when he got down to the goal line, tried to make a Tim Tebow jump pass.
Yeah. And
to me, and from us on the booth and from our sideline people, it looked like to me the ball hit the ground. Mm-hmm. I mean, the kid came out of nowhere. And the officials did one of those things where it's a little irritating. They didn't know what to call. Nobody did incomplete, but nobody pointed toward North Hardin. They just kind of stood there, and then they huddled, and of course, you know what happened. They gave it to North Hardin.
One guy had it right, and the other 6 had it wrong, and the 6 said, "Hey, we're going to go with the wrong choice."
Yeah.
That's Barren County's trips to North Hardin so far.
Well, and then we got 3 unsportsmanlike conduct.
Oh, God.
Back to back right after that. So instead of them getting it at the 20, because the call was in the end zone, they got it on the 35 of us. But we held them again.
Oh, wow.
We held them again, and just defensively, I can't tell you how well we played.
Yeah,
and I just thought an amazing performance. And North Hardin is a great defensive team. I mean, they got Division I players everywhere, and they're just so fast. It was just we didn't really have an answer. Didn't have enough time to throw it down the field. And anything we try to throw short, they just jumped the route because they knew they didn't have to respect us going down the field because they put so much pressure on you.
Yeah.
And so we just had all kinds. We had 6 turnovers and we had 6 interceptions. And, you can't beat top 5 team with that many interceptions. But I was really proud of them. I thought it was a really a good performance, and it's a performance, that we tried to win. We didn't go up there and didn't play scared and wasn't intimidated and went up there and competed, but just couldn't make enough plays offensively.
Yeah. There was something, as I was listening to the broadcast, I was headed to the Glasgow game from the U.S. Army game night over in Bowling Green, which, by the way, we're going to interview Coach Arnett, and that will air on that show this coming Friday to talk to him. First winning season since 2000. And really, one of the things I want to, some of the questions we have for him will be related to how the team performed against some of the top competition that they face. I mean, overall, history for Barren County has been, even if they were having a good season, a lot of times when they were in that Bowling Green, South Warren District, Greenwood, those games were not necessarily competitive.
Right.
And the final scores of these games, suggest that they weren't competitive in certain ways. But the truth is that the Trojans played well and played hard in all of these games from start to finish in this district. And, they didn't win any of the district games this year, but there are signs of positivity going forward from what I gained from watching the team this year and listening to you guys talk about it.
I agree. I thought it was a positive year. Now, it's they lose a lot.
Yeah.
4 out of the 5 linemen were seniors, and they were 3 to 4 year starters. Mm-hmm. That's a big loss. They lose Holloway and Tyler Bush. Tyler Bush was our best player.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a tremendous offensive player, defensive player, special teams player. And I believe, and I think Coach Arnett I think he could start for any team in the state.
Yeah.
Somewhere. He was that good of a player. We lose those 2. We lost Easton Frazier, who's a really excellent defensive player that, led the team in tackles for the last couple of years. So, we do lose a lot of players. But we do have a really good young quarterback back.
Yep.
Our receivers are back, other than, our receivers are back. All of our receivers are back.
Yeah.
So that part's back. I think we got a good freshman, a good freshman running back that can help. The question is, games oftentimes are won by people you never hear of. No, that's your offensive line and defensive line. That's the question. Do they have enough help coming to replace those guys?
And you mentioned all that. You also the Trojans also played most of this year without Gavin Withrow, who was expected to be a key offensive piece as well.
Yep.
And what is he, a sophomore, junior?
He's a junior.
Yeah. So I mean, he'll be back. But I think the thing, Holloway came over and played this year.
That was unexpected. But I mean, and that was a nice bonus. Yeah, 14, 15 touchdowns.
Yeah. But I mean, to me, the key is defensive talent is a combination of talent and scheme and people who just want to play defense.
Sure.
Because I mean, defenses, you don't get much glory unless you make a mistake a lot of times on defense. Yeah, right. So I mean, that's a positive sign.
Yeah,
there.
we probably have half our defensive starters are back. Mm-hmm. So that part's good. It's the offensive line that will be the real question.
Yeah, and that'll be the thing that Barren County and Coach Arnett and his staff will have to figure out how to, get in there. I would say another positive out of this possibility is more kids being interested in playing football. So there may be some gyms walking the hallway who say, okay, I'm going to try it out. Where in the past for Barren County, that was really hard sometimes to get kids to want to come out and play football or stick around.
Can't miss it when you come on campus.
That's right.
Got a beautiful facility.
Yep. So those are all the things headed in the right directions for the Trojans. And I hope and I believe that they'll be able to build off this. And if you think about it, I mean, this is quite a change in Arnett's first year to this year in so many ways. I mean, because his first year, you guys didn't even have a home field.
That's right.
And then last year was played an independent schedule out of district. And a lot of people were like, well, we'll see. And then found out, moved up to 6A, so lots of questions about that. A lot of it has worked out pretty well. And other programs such as Logan County and the like have proven that you can go from basically nothing, to being recognized at a higher level.
I think overall it was a successful year. I mean, I don't think there's any I think if you're just being completely fair, it was a successful year. If you just watch the team play, you can notice the improvement in terms of talent, and I think if you just want to be objectively fair, it was. I think you have to consider it a successful year.
Yep. And by the way, I think during the intermission, did you figure out a way to fix the high school football playoff?
I've got a suggestion.
Okay.
That nobody cares about. But I would think I would like to keep your districts.
Yep.
Okay, so you're still playing district schedules. We're going to let the top two teams, first and second place, are automatic qualifiers.
Yep.
And then we're going to have a certain amount of at-large teams.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be some good teams that came in third in certain districts, and we'll fill it in that way. Whether or not that's 16 teams or 20 teams or whatever.
Yeah, something to make the math work.
But I would do the top two teams in each district, so it gives everybody a fighting chance. You don't have to rely on a computer to get in.
Yeah,
and then we'll take the some at-large teams, which would be determined by a properly vetted system of RTI. Is not RTI. RPI. That's correct.
Well, I think if they had not thrown in that class bonus in this RPI, it would have been better.
Yeah.
That made some funky numbers.
You're right.
Well, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, Western Kentucky University, the Hilltoppers, they jumped on Arkansas early, and then they just kept punching. I mean, it was like one of those MMA fight things, that's over with like in 3 minutes, where somebody's just knocked unconscious. That's basically what the Hilltoppers did to Arkansas on the road, ruined the Razorbacks' day in every way. And you know what they really did? They have officially given Bobby Petrino, I say officially, they have unofficially given Bobby Petrino an interview with Arkansas.
I told a family member Saturday night I got a family member that's a big Arkansas fan.
Yeah.
Because they're from that area. And I said, this is how you lose your job.
Yes, it is.
I mean, this is how you lose your job when you're Arkansas, an SEC team, and you're giving Western, what did they get, $1.2 million to come in?
I think that's what it is, yeah.
When you're giving a school to come in, you're paying them to come in, and then they not only they beat you, they thoroughly beat you.
Yeah. They embarrass you.
They did.
Yeah.
With a quarterback that wasn't good enough to play for you.
That's right.
And I said, this is how you lose your job. I didn't know they would fire him the next day.
I actually did not realize they had fired him the next day.
They did.
I did not. That's news to me.
Yeah, they fired him Sunday. About 1:00.
Oh, I thought he might make it to his Monday press conference.
No. They've already agreed on the settlement. I think it's got like a $8 or $9 million buyout, and they're going to pay it in monthly installments. That's what it said. Yeah, so he did not make it.
Gosh.
He did not make it past the weekend.
Well,
but that's what it happens. I mean, Willie Taggart got canned after now a rival loss to Miami.
Yeah.
And I mean, this coach at Arkansas has only been there 2 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, Western went in there, and Western could play Arkansas 10 times. They're going to beat them 8 out of 10. They're just better.
Yeah.
They got better players, and to me, they're better coached.
Yeah.
And Ty Story, who started 9 games for Arkansas, from Arkansas. He was Player of the Year in high school in Arkansas. Won 2 state titles in Arkansas. And he
might as well be Mr. Arkansas.
Well, he was motivated.
Oh yeah.
And to go back and he was. Threw for 2 touchdowns and ran for 2 or something like that. I mean, he was fantastic, and Western just dominated them, and they're bowl eligible now, deservedly so. And again, it's something that the most mind-boggling thing about Western is not that they beat Army and Arkansas, is they lost to Central Arkansas. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, they should be staring at right now 7 wins.
Yeah,
and that's the most mind-boggling loss of all.
I still chalk that loss up basically to the hangover from the season before. You still had a bunch of players, especially on defense and offense, who had lost all kinds of games the year before they thought they had won. And sometimes, but hey, they've cleansed that now.
And Ty Story wasn't starting then either.
True.
And not that I'm blaming the other quarterback, and it may not have made a difference, but it seems like Ty Story has done a really good job since he's been placed in quarterback.
He has, after I think his first game or his first outing with the Hilltoppers, he has really kind of settled in and is playing exceptionally well.
Right.
I mean, you go look at the 2 games that they lost, Marshall and FAU.
Wasn't necessarily his fault.
Well,
played pretty good, didn't
he? He played well in both those games. There were a couple of things in both those games, but the FAU game really kind of turned when he got sacked and fumbled,
right? And
they returned it for a touchdown. So there have been some mistakes on the offensive side or the defensive side, even probably, that allowed them to lose those 2 games. But they are, you can see when they're totally dialed in and focused, they are a very good football team at this point in time.
They are, and this is something that. Football schedules in college are made years in advance.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years in advance.
Yeah.
And when Western and Arkansas agreed to play each other, I don't think either team imagined that A, Arkansas was going to be this bad at the time.
Right.
And B, you're going to pay somebody to come in and beat you.
Yeah.
5 years ago, I don't think that was a thought process.
This contract, I think Randy Lee was talking about it on the broadcast. The interesting thing about this contract, from what I understood on that broadcast, was it is a football/basketball contract.
Yeah, Arkansas comes to Western this year. They play at Dillon basketball.
Yeah, so they were going to play the football game in Fayetteville, and then they would play a home and home in basketball. Yep. And that was part of the contract.
They played last year. They beat them last year in Arkansas.
Yeah.
In basketball.
Right. And so... and maybe that contract was written up in Stansbury's first year or the year before he got there, something like that. I don't remember.
What odds would you get at the start of the year? Odds. But just, let's say we're in Indiana where it's legal. What odds could you get on this one? Western versus Arkansas, Western versus Central Arkansas.
Right.
That Western would beat Arkansas but lose to Central Arkansas.
Yeah.
What's that? 1,000 to 1?
Probably. Let's just roll in. Let's say because you mentioned that the Hilltoppers beat the Razorbacks last year in Fayetteville in men's basketball. What if they were to get the contract sweep and beat them this year in Diddle? Wouldn't that be fantastic?
What odds to that Western would sweep Arkansas in the contract?
Yeah.
The football and 2 basketball games.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're not giving those odds out because if you win it, you just own the casino now.
So we can beat any Arkansas school except for Central Arkansas.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, send us the Razorbacks, but none of those others.
But yeah, a great win. Great win, and they looked so good doing it too. And it was on the SEC network too. Great publicity.
Yep. And you know, I sent that tweet out Saturday night joking about what Western had done for Bobby Petrino, was give their former coach an interview with Arkansas. Mm-hmm. But the rustling in Arkansas prior to the game on Saturday was there were fans and boosters who were like, hey, I don't care what Bobby did. Can we get him to be our coach?
Well, he's not going back. That ain't going to happen.
Hey, you know what? I didn't think he was going to go back to Louisville either. So,
yeah, but he was successful at Louisville.
He was the most successful Arkansas coach in a number of years.
Right. But the lying and the motorcycle wreck. I mean,
since Houston Nutt. I mean, Houston Nutt was the other Arkansas coach who was at least somewhat successful.
Well, the guy that came in from Wisconsin, at least he got big wins.
Yeah,
he had puzzling losses.
Yes, but, pretty inconsistent.
Brett Billiam or whatever. Yeah, he had puzzling losses, but he had at least occasionally good wins.
Yeah. Well, meanwhile, our other 2 major university teams, football teams, didn't do so well on the weekend.
Yeah, well, at least Kentucky played well.
They did.
Now it's ugly to watch, but Kentucky and Tennessee was at least, I mean, Kentucky led the entire way. I mean, they dominated Tennessee in terms of almost every statistical category.
Yeah.
I mean, they had the ball like 2/3 of the game, 40-something minutes to 19 of Tennessee. Yeah. Kentucky only threw it 7 times, which is, in today's modern football, it's incredible to think of that, to be honest with you. Now, they only threw it 7 times because maybe they can't throw it.
This is reflective of in the first segment where we were talking about throwing it when you want to, not when you have to.
That's right. But they were, despite dominating the game, and despite I think some people's frustration that they can't throw it, they had it 3rd and goal from the 1-yard line with a minute to go in the game for the win, really, and couldn't convert.
Yeah.
And again, this is another situation where Tennessee. To me, this is what I don't understand, and they're paying these coaches, SEC coaches, millions of dollars. I mean, it happened in Florida too, but Tennessee, it looked like to me, was playing the wrong quarterback. I mean, they played the freshman quarterback in the first half. He looked horrible to me, and they changed quarterback, and the guy they brought in looks 10 times better.
These college coaches are killing your philosophy that the best player is probably the one on the field.
Well, Florida's the same way, right? I mean, the Florida would have beaten Kentucky if their starting quarterback had stayed in the game.
Yeah.
And I guess from a Kentucky perspective, Kentucky has to be frustrated from a fan perspective. They had Tennessee and Florida beat. Dead beat, and lost both of them.
Yeah, I know if people have listened to this show through the years, they know that one of your philosophies is usually the best player is the one on the field, barring
most coaches get that right.
Yeah, but these college coaches, a lot of these guys are ruining that notion these days, especially when it comes to quarterbacks.
Yeah,
I mean but I also adhere to this little philosophy when it comes to some college coaches and pro coaches and coaches in general. I think they have players that they have invested so much of their time and effort into in recruiting and training and all that they overlook one ingredient. And sometimes there are players who are players during the game.
Yeah, make plays.
They don't look like much in practice, and they may not even do that well in practice. And I think one of the greatest examples of this, although this is kind of a off-key example, is somebody like Jerry Rice,
Right.
who dropped down in the draft because he didn't run fast enough. But if you watched and yes, he played at Mississippi Valley State, but at any point in time, if you watched him play football, you're like, that dude is just a football player,
Right.
period.
And I'm sure the evaluation process in football is harder than basketball. Because basketball, you can scrimmage more. You can make it like a game.
Yeah.
And you can see how people perform in those things. Football, you don't do that near as much because of the injury factor. So oftentimes the person that is chosen, I'm sure, to start at that most important position, quarterback, is somebody that you're not seeing in a lot of game action and scrimmages in football. You just don't. They're not allowed to be hit either. Remember, and you put the green jersey on and you don't hit the quarterbacks in college and when you're doing practices and practice games, and oftentimes you don't know what a player is like at the quarterback position until they get hit or they bounce out of a pocket, and when you're scrimmaging, they're stopping, they're blowing a whistle, or they can't hit the quarterback. So I'm sure the evaluation period is harder. Because the live game of football is so much different than when they're in shorts or when you're not allowed to hit a certain player.
Yeah, it makes me wonder what kind of stress tests they have during the process of practice. Because people can do a lot of things when they're not under immediate duress.
Yep.
They maybe even be able to do them well.
Yes.
But you put them under duress, and I think of this when it comes to things like, I don't know, shooting a handgun under duress, or playing a sport under duress. I mean, if you're under duress, your body reaction is different.
Sure.
And so that your stress level changes, and some people react better to that than others.
Some go worse.
Yeah, some people just go downhill under those situations, and I don't think you know that until the game happens.
That's correct.
But meanwhile, Louisville got mollywopped by Miami.
Yeah, they did not, especially defensively.
Yeah.
Now, they moved the ball up and down the field. They had close, again, 500 total yards of offense and put up 27 points, but they had no answer at all defensively.
Yeah.
And had some special teams breakdown. I think they had a punt blocked, and it just not a good performance on ABC television, too. It's
Right.
national television. So that was but, I think Louisville, Coach Satterfield has built up such we can live with a couple of bad ones now because it's been such a turnaround.
Yeah.
And they have North Carolina State this week, and they still have Kentucky, so they still have an opportunity to get to a bowl game and to win out in a positive manner or get another big win or whatever. But, that was not our finest hour from a Louisville perspective.
That was the first game this year. The Cardinals just looked bad on defense.
Yeah,
I mean, they've been
they
outclassed.
tried. They didn't quit.
No, but they didn't look. That was the first time the talent did not look like it was there at all.
Right.
I mean, just where they were just utterly dominated.
Yep, I agree with that.
Well, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, former Caverna Colonel Mason Faulkner is off to a good start with the Western Carolina Catamounts. He transferred from Northern Kentucky, and he had to sit out a year, and so we didn't get to see any of him playing basketball last year. And now he's with Western Carolina, and he's paired up with a guy who's a pretty good player for Western Carolina. But out of the gate, they played two games. They played Georgia, which they lost that game. I think it was 92-71, something like that. And then they won against Gardner-Webb, which made it to the NCAA tournament last year.
And he played away at 22 and 21, right?
Yes, and he shot. Here's the thing. I mean, he shot 53% from three.
It's good.
Yeah, and that's a pretty impressive number. I mean, we always knew he was a pretty good shooter. And I'll tell you another thing about Mason that people who grew up seeing Mason would be shocked is the way he's built these days. Because apparently they put him on a pretty extensive weight training program. And I saw this video of him, like, doing a dunk just in a warm, I guess it was like on the Madness night, Midnight Madness or whatever it was. And it looked like he had actually jumped off a trampoline.
Yeah. Well, of course, he also had a year off.
Yeah.
During the transfer part.
Right.
Which, when you're not playing games, you don't have to do the rest and recovery as much. So it gave him an opportunity, I'm sure, during that transfer year, to work on his body and so forth.
Yeah.
And so congratulations. I mean, those are we knew he could play. He played well at Northern Kentucky.
Yes, he did.
And played a lot his freshman year and not quite as much as sophomore year. He and Carson Williams both left, for whatever reason they both left, but they were both contributors to a really good Northern Kentucky team. So, we know he can play, and I'm glad he's found a good place at Western Carolina.
Well, that's a good segue, too, because Carson Williams, we knew he could play, too. He got the year off. He's at Western now. And he's definitely been an added piece for the Hilltoppers in their first 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, he's a beast inside.
Yeah.
And he looked like, to me, he's really improved his outside game. He's made a 3.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't known as a 3-point shooter in high school or at Northern Kentucky.
Yeah.
But a ferocious rebounder, and he gives them a toughness that I think they really, really needed.
Mm-hmm.
And he and Cam Justice,
the
other Mr. Basketball, transferred from Vandy to
IUPUI.
And he had 5 threes Saturday against Austin Peay. He had 22 points. He was 5 out of 6 from 3.
Yeah.
And another shooter that they desperately need. And, those – Cam Justice and Cameron Carson Williams just completely changes their team.
Yeah.
You got to guard them.
Yeah.
And one gives them tremendous amount of toughness. And if they can get the transfer from David Lipscomb, the point guard, Cooper, I mean, they're going to be really hard to handle. I mean, they beat a pretty good Austin Peay team handily Saturday, 97-73 or something like that, handily, and shot it very well and just dominated them, actually.
It's going to be an interesting year, I think. I mean, we talked about this already, that we think we have, in the case of WKU, Louisville, and Kentucky, 3 good men's basketball programs.
3 top 25 teams.
Yeah, and
of course, Kentucky's number 1 in the nation right now.
Yeah, and we'll talk about them in just a second. The thing about the WKU part of it is we don't even think this is the best possible team that they could have, just depending on how the Cooper situation works out.
That's correct.
So, that's a little bit scary. And, they've got that. We knew they had a lot of talent. The question was, how is it all going to mix together? And Stansbury seems to have done a pretty good job of getting them to mix together.
Yeah, we haven't even mentioned their supposed best player, Bassey. Bassey is a, NBA prospect.
Yeah. He's on the Naismith watch list, which is like the basketball player.
Oh, he looked good. I saw him Saturday. I thought he's probably lost 10, 15 pounds. Slimmed up, looks quicker, made a 3. He's expanding that game, which he didn't have that last year.
Yeah, the offseason is a good time to work on stuff, and he definitely made the right choice to come back to the Hilltoppers instead of staying in the NBA draft. And like you said, Kentucky's number 1 now. They were number 2 last Tuesday when they faced Michigan State, and they beat Michigan State. And I've got to say, this might be, in all of Calipari's time, the best-looking team he has coming out of the gate. Now, he's had teams that have been, I think, considered more talented in terms of, like, just prospects and that kind of stuff, but he seems to have found a group of players that are a combination of talented and maybe have a desire to, like, win at a different level, maybe.
I don't know if they got a lot of depth, but that's okay right now. The freshman, what's his name, Maxey?
Yeah.
He had 26 against Michigan State.
Tyrese, is that it?
He looks like a real player.
Yeah.
Great energy. The transfer from, I don't know, Drexel, Bucknell, one of those.
Bucknell, I think.
One of those. They got to have him. He's 6'8", but looks like to me the best shooter on the team.
Yeah.
And he's a stretch 4. And, they've got 3 post players, and that's it. I mean, Nick Richards, and you have the Bucknell guy, and then I've forgotten another guy, the left-handed kid. But that's all they got.
Yeah.
They can't afford an injury there, but their guards are lightning quick. I mean, you talk about a good defensive team, their guards will cause all kinds of havoc. are they number one in the nation? I don't know. It's hard. It's too early to tell about who's really, really good and who's not right now. But I question their depth, and I have a little questions about their outside shooting. But I think it's going to be a fun team.
Yeah,
they play hard. There's not that true star that everybody's just going to be talking about. And I don't know if they have a top 5 player in the draft, but it looks like a team that plays well together.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the difference is that the recruiting of this team was more low-key. I mean, I think there was more talk about the players who decided not to come to Kentucky than the ones who did. But it looks like with Maxey, he may have gotten the best of the whole bunch. At least early indicators are, at least offensively and because of his length. I mean, he's going to be hard to handle.
I like his energy.
Yeah, and he has a different kind of attitude about it.
Yeah, he didn't. Sometimes with these elite players, they got too much cool in their game for my liking.
Yeah, yeah.
And he didn't look that way. I mean, he's energized. He plays hard, and he has what all I've read about, an affectionate personality. That he likes to work, he likes to practice, and anytime your best player likes to practice and work hard, that's a good sign.
Yeah. So it bleeds off to everybody else.
It does.
And also Louisville, I mean, they got off to a good start. They're off to a good start. They opened with an ACC game.
At Miami. They were up 30 at one time.
Yeah.
They were really good. I mean, really, really good. They're 2-0, got two wins, and, they played. I mean, Nora is really good, and McMahon is the shooter, is playing well. I mean, they got some players. They got a freshman out of Texas that I didn't know a lot about. I think his last name's Williamson. Really good too. I was impressed. So there's a chance that when Louisville and Kentucky play in December, they both could be undefeated.
Yeah, and I mean that would be fantastic. The other thing about I think the Louisville situation is. Again, sort of like with the football coach, they brought in Chris Mack, and some people were like, "I don't know about this," but
they're very similar. They're just solid people, and they're not flashy, and they're very, very just solid. And I think when you go to sleep at night, if I'm an administrator at Louisville, I'm not worried about what those two guys are going to do.
Yeah, which is critical.
I mean, it really is after a while. I mean, they are solid people.
Yeah.
And that would mean a lot to me if I was an administrator. That I could be, kind of trust that they're going to make the right decisions.
Louisville has gone the opposite direction of how it went whenever it picked up Patino and Petrino as their coaches. They went with kind of big named, big personality people. In this case, Satterfield and Mack are not that.
It happens after scandals.
Yeah, I mean it's like
when you make coaching changes, you tend to go opposite when you make a change. It's just normal. I mean, when you make a change, you tend to go. If you're really low key and blah blah blah, and things don't work out, you try to go for a splashy personality.
Yeah.
If you're having some scandals and things like that, well, you want to get somebody that's rock solid.
Yeah.
And that's what they've done.
Yeah. Well, I think both of them have been winners in that way. I do wonder, the whole question we talked about this last week with. Would Mark Stoops be on the radar for the Florida State football coaching job?
Yep.
And it looks like we had decided on the wrong Stoops, possibly.
No.
You think it's going to be Bob?
No.
You don't think Bob Stoops is going to get that job either?
Nope. Don't think he wants it. Mark Stoops.
So you're still on that? You're still on that?
I promise it's not Bob Stoops. He don't want any more of that.
Yeah, I mean, life's good for him. Probably.
Yes, it is.
But also, in real quick here, I want to talk about Lamar Jackson real quick because I don't know if you saw that run against Cincinnati.
I did.
That was ridiculous.
Cincinnati didn't. They're still looking for him.
Especially that defensive end. I mean, I felt bad for that dude. That dude chased him from the moment that he took off running to the end zone and never got close to him.
And again, it's we're not paid very well.
No. Yeah.
But 30 teams passed on Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Now, some of them didn't need a quarterback, but there were 4 quarterbacks taken in front of him.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
If it's redrafted, do you think that's what happened now?
I don't know, but I tell you one thing. Harbaugh said the most important thing. He said when they decided they were going to draft him, they knew they were going to have to change the team to be what he does best, and they have.
Well, that's smart.
Yep. This Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.